And we start with our pranam mantra. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Being spiritual. What it means to be spiritual. Before we discuss how to be spiritual, what was the meaning of being spiritual? Since we are discussing it in the context of Hindu religion, Indian spiritual traditions. So, first, let me say that there are very clearly four different kinds of Hindus. Four different kinds. Of course, if you are serious about studying religion, you may say that this happens with every religion. Probably yes. First is those who are born in Hindu culture, Hindu religion, and they only have Hindu on their passport or any official document. That is, they are non-practicing Hindus. There is a technical term for that in our old books. It's called Samanya. We had four Varnas, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. It's very clearly mentioned that Varnashram Dharma is meant only for those people who are following Vedic religion. If a person is not following Vedic religion, does not want to follow Vedic religion, so Varnashram Dharma is not applicable to them. And they were known as Samanya. So most of the Hindus are Samanya. Of course, Kumbh Mela this year has suddenly made people a bit religious. I don't know how religious they are. People think that they can wash off their sins, etc., etc. That would be so wonderful. Like I think Mirabai has sung that if by bathing in Ganga one could get liberation, then there are fish that take bath in Ganga every day, all the time. They would be the first to be liberated. The second quality is, of course, the noble Hindus, like many of you might have been earlier, who think that they are Hindu, they want to do some practices, but they don't believe in God, they don't understand religion, they are not into spirituality. Third one is those who claim themselves to be religious. It's they who actually hold the religion. Every religion, be it Islam, be it Christianity, is the religious types who really hold the religion. And the fourth is the spiritual Hindus, the spiritual ones. They are the persons who are giving strength and giving momentum to their religion. So we distinctly have four kinds. No use discussing the non-practicing Hindus, what they do, they don't do. It's meaningless. In fact, you will see that most of the allegations that you hear against Hindu religion is about what these non-practicing ones do. So let's not discuss them. It's no use. When it comes to being a noble Hindu, being a religious Hindu, and being a spiritual Hindu, most important thing for us to understand and know is to be spiritual. First, you have to develop nobility. You have to be a perfect gentleman according to the practices of your religion. Second is, you must grow in religious practices because religious practices make your mind ready for higher things. So nowadays, this has become some kind of a truism. I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. You cannot be spiritual without being religious. It may sound cool, as they say, the youngsters say, it sounds cool. But no. If you really want to be spiritual, first you have to be noble. That means a gentleman, a gentle person. Second, you have to be religious. That means you have to have religious practices. And number three, then you go for spirituality. Now, how do you define the noble of Hindu religion? And naturally, the question may arise in your head, how is a noble Hindu different from, say, a noble Christian? Earlier, there was a common practice for the Christians to say, I'm a good Christian. Of course, no one says I am a good Hindu because we don't know of these expressions. So, what's the difference between a good Hindu and say a good Christian or say a good Muslim? There's a fundamental difference. As far as Hindu religion is concerned, if a person says that I am neither spiritual nor religious, but I am a noble person, I am a noble Hindu, you have to have two distinct qualities in you. First, you have to be inclusive. You must not have any clannish mentality. You should not have any herd mentality. You should not feel that you're the, the small group who are your type are yours, others are not. Other religions have this herd mentality. Hindus cannot afford to have herd mentality because Hindu religion is based on inclusiveness. Now, what is inclusiveness? We have explained earlier, which means accepting every God and every spiritual path as true and correct. At the same time, not letting anybody go. Everybody has a place in Hinduism, and those who do not believe in Hindu religion, even they are fully accepted. So, we never had wars and struggles and fights in the name of religion, which others are very good at. Second is being non intrusive. You must not do anything which will be an intrusion on the life of others. You may say that, well, inclusiveness and non intrusiveness are same. No, there is a difference. There are certain differences. That means, even in inclusiveness, a personality may be accepted as being there, just that your openness accommodates that person. In non intrusiveness, you don't trample upon that person's freedom without that person's permission, etc. etc. Now, whole Hindu moral code, all the Hindu practices are essentially based on these two principles of inclusiveness and non intrusiveness. Those of you who have this book, The Hindu Way, if you go through it thoroughly and if you try to understand what is being said in that, and if you go through the books like Manusmriti, you'll find that these are the two principles. Do not go by what the politicians are saying or what the sensational speakers are saying. The fact is that Manusmriti and every Smriti in India is based on these two principles. So, beyond these two, what are the essential things that a noble Hindu must practice? The first one is purity. Hindu religion is based on purity because we believe that our pure state, it is the state of being spiritual, is pure Atman. Impurity, which is known as avidya, maya, ignorance, etc., it's not something permanent. It's not something real. This has to be removed by knowing who we are. That means impurity has to be removed. Shankaracharya, the great teacher of Hindu religion, gives a beautiful example of sandalwood. When sandalwood is kept in contact with water for a long time, it develops bad odor. How to get rid of it? Just rub it. Bad odor which had come on it will be removed. And the sandalwood will be what it used to be. When we apply this principle of purity, like washing ourselves and taking bath regularly, etc., this is very common with Hindu religion. That's why you find this, for example, this kumbh. Kumbh has more to do with washing the sins away. Why? Because we believe in purity and we believe that Ganga water cleanses us of all the sins. Now, whether you accept or not, that's a different thing. I'm just talking about what makes a Hindu different from others. Purity is a very important thing. In Islam, also, there are practices. In Christianity, this external purity is not stressed upon much. But in Hindu religion, so much that Purity, that is cleansing oneself itself, becomes lifelong practices. In earlier times, say maybe 100 years ago, widows, etc., and Vaishnavas, they used to keep on washing and bathing for the day. And this kind of practice still practiced by some, but now it's not much in vogue. In general, we lay a lot of stress on purity as far as physical purity is concerned, verbal purity is concerned, mental purity is concerned, etc., etc. Of these, those who are interested says that physical purity is attained by pranayama. Pranayama is regulating your breath. We will discuss pranayama when we discuss Raj Yoga. Second is the purity of mind. This is attained through meditation. Naturally, you may ask what is meditation, how it is done. That also we will discuss when we discuss yoga. However, just to remind you, till 50 years ago or so, these things were common knowledge in every Hindu family. In the last 50 years, suddenly Hindus have become so materialist, and Hindus are running so much after physical pleasures, including gaining wealth, that they have completely forgotten what it means to meditate, what it means to be religious, etc., etc. These things require family tradition or a tradition that can be learned from a proper teacher. Who is a proper teacher? Anyone whom you consider fit to be your teacher is your teacher. As you grow, you may need to have a better teacher. God will send you a proper teacher. Don't judge your teacher. Whomsoever you feel is good enough for you, go for him. Learn whatever he knows. If you reach that level, God Himself will send you a better person. And purity of speech, purity of speech is attained by studying scriptures and reciting scriptures regularly. What are these scriptures that you need to recite? Books like Gita, and for us, it's Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. In Bengali, it's known as Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita. Then there is Chandi, Devi Mahatmya, and or Durga Saptashati, or any sacred book that belongs to the tradition in which you are growing. So, supposing, for example, you are growing in Vaishnava tradition, you may have some other books. Like in Hindi belt, Hanuman Chalisa is a very popular book, and Ramcharitmanas is a very popular book. Perfectly all right. Once you know that this is an accepted scripture, you have to recite it regularly. That purifies your speech, and slowly you find that the dirty words, dirty expressions, they drop away from you. Then, similarly, there are certain practices which have best been popularized by yoga philosophy. Truthfulness, it's a very important thing. Then there is non-violence, non-acceptance of gifts, non-stealing. See, every time it's non, because you need to move from impurity to purity. So these are known as 5 great practices, and these should be practiced by everybody. When it comes to food, food is a very interesting thing. We don't take uchista. Uchista means food which has been tasted by someone else. So sharing food, etc., is not encouraged in Hindu religion. And as far as food practices are concerned, we find that it is not fixed. Like in some religions, they say that it's a taboo. In Hindu religion, food is more of a social practice. Generally, what we say that when you take any food, you should first offer it to your Ishta, God, God whose name you repeat and recite regularly. That purifies food. So impure food, impurity of any kind. If you study books like Manusmriti, they have described impurity in various ways. For example, If there is hair in your food, someone's hair that has fallen is considered to be impure, and lots of other things. We will not go in those details because these are social practices that change with time. The most important thing is you should not take any food that dulls your brain, which means you cannot take drugs, you cannot take intoxicants, you cannot take alcoholic beverages, no alcohol, because it dulls your brain. Nor can you take anything that excites you, anything that excites you. But there are people who are in a particular kind of activity. They will need that. Let them have it. In general, we are talking that, for example, those who are, say, in the army, working at high altitude, they may require wine to keep themselves warm and active. But even they will never take wine beyond a permissible limit. They won't let their mind go dull. So that's the idea. And above everything, tapasya, that is focusing yourself on a particular goal and dedicating yourself fully to it. This is a very, very, very important aspect of Hindu religion. So these are the, you can say, common things that every Hindu does and should do. If you want to be spiritual, you will have to have these qualities. From there, now we move to being religious. What it means to be religious. Now, we had mentioned in the previous talk that Panch Mahayagya, five great sacrifices. Of these, the most important is Brahma Yagya, which means doing mantra japam. Now, mantra japa is about a mantra that you have received from your guru, spiritual guru. He tells you that this is your mantra, and this particular form of God is your Ishta, your chosen deity. And then meditation related to that mantra. This has to come formally from a group. That's what makes you a Hindu. If you say that you have decided on a particular deity and you found out some mantra and you are doing it on your, I mean, who can stop you? There's no one to stop you. But that is not what makes you a Hindu. A Hindu means you will have a formal guru who will instruct you in the formal ways of doing mantra japam and meditation. With that, study of scriptures daily on a daily basis. You will see that we waste so much of time every day, on what? Utter nonsense. Watching television, watching serials. We can always take out 10-15 minutes for studying scriptures every day. This is very, very important. This is what makes you religious. Which books? Specifically, the sacred books as declared by your tradition. So, if you belong to, say, Sri Ramakrishna tradition, as I belong, so we have some sacred books like Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna in English, works of Swami Vivekananda, words of Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi, then Gita, then Devi Mahatmya, Chandi. These are our sacred books. And you work out how you are going to recite. There is no fixed rule. Like Hindu religion gives you a lot of freedom, unlike, say, in other religions where there's a lot of regimentation. Hindu religion is not about regimentation, it gives you a lot of freedom. And that freedom should be utilized for growth and not for wasting one's life. Second one is Dev Yagya. Actually, in earlier times, it began with Rishi Rin. Rishi Rin means the culture that we have has come from the sages. So we need to repay that debt. And for that, they used to say that you should meditate and you should do study. You should do study of scriptures regularly. Later, they changed the name from Rishi Rin, Rishi Yagya, to Brahma Yagya. which is perfectly all right. Next to it is Dev Yagya. There is slight difference between Brahma Yagya and Dev Yagya. Brahma Yagya is more of spiritual practice. It's your connect with the divine, your personal connect with the divine. Now, when it comes to Dev Yagya, is a community connect with God. You are living in a society, you are a Hindu, you want to claim yourself belonging to Indian spiritual traditions. So they say that you must have formal religious practices. I know of many families who who treat Sri Ramakrishna as the family deity, and morning till night they have rituals related to Sri Ramakrishna. Waking the Lord in the morning, offering puja, offering some some food item or fruits, singing arati in the evening, and putting him to sleep at night. The entire family is connected that way with God. So the kids who are growing up in the family, they learn of these religious values since their childhood. It should be done. And in every Hindu family, those of you who are slightly elderly would know, till 40, 50 years ago, or even today in many families, these practices are fully on. They have their family deity, and every family has religious practices that connect their community, their family, with family deity. That is Deva Yajna. And then visiting temples regularly and etc. etc. These things are essential religious practices. The other three, when it comes to Pitri Yajna, which we had explained earlier, and Manushya Yajna and Bhut Yajna, of these Pitri Yajna, this also used to be an essential practice for the Hindus. If you go through Manusmriti, etc., there a lot of emphasis has been put on Pitri Yajna because the heavens in Hindu religion are of different kinds. One of them is that which belongs to ancestors. But now Pitri Yajna is not that popular. It's just confined to offering tarpan and it's offering pind at Gaya. So one of our listeners had asked me, do we need to do tarpan once we have offered pind? Actually, they say that until you have offered pinddan, you should perform shraddha till you have offered pind. Tarpan is in memory of your ancestors. Because when you offer pind, it's generally for the seven generation. I don't know about religious rituals, that's not my line. But often I can say that it's a common connect. You are feeling connected with the community. So you should definitely offer tarpan every year. Once a year is not a big thing. And offering a small part of your food every day during lunch, keeping it aside and giving it away to the birds. It's perfectly all, nothing wrong with it. Now, beyond these two yajna, which partly we had mentioned in the earlier talks, there is a must for, there is a, when you are performing ritualistic worship, which most people perform, if you want to be known as a religious Hindu, you have to have formal worship. They say that when you perform ritualistic worship, Panchadevata, it's, it is said that Acharya Shankar made this popular. Panchadevata, the five gods, their worship is mandatory before any puja. Now, first of them is Ganesh. Second is Lord Vishnu. Third is Shiva. And then fourth is Surya, sun. And last is Durga. These five, Panchadevata, they are known as Panchadevata. So if you pick up any book on how to perform worship, I think there's a very good book on worship of Sri Ramakrishna brought out by Chennai Mutt. It's a beautiful book. There also the mantras, etc. are given, and we will cover some mantras on these deities. So, Panchadevata is a very important aspect of Hindu religious practices. And then visiting temples, going to tirtha, etc. These things also form important rituals for the Hindus. First is pilgrimage. Now, pilgrimage is a very interesting. I remember we had one Japanese monk long ago. He told me that in Japan, if there is a beautiful spot, they'll make it a tourist spot. In India, if there is any inaccessible place or a beautiful place, people will construct a temple. See, this is the fundamental difference between Hindu mindset and the mindset of others. Like if you go to the Himalayas, you'll find that there are inaccessible peaks, etc. And there also there is a temple. There's a beautiful spot, there's a temple. Now, nowadays, of course, religion has changed into religious tourism. Yes, what is this? Worship of Sri Ramakrishna. From somebody has shared it. Wonderful. Name of the book. So, pilgrimage. You cannot confine the places of pilgrimage. They are just huge. And every town, in fact, every village and every sacred, every river is considered sacred. Then confluences, Sangam, wherever two rivers meet, these are considered to be extremely sacred places. Now, whenever you go to any sacred place, of course, places connected with important spiritual personalities. For example, for us, Sri Ramakrishna is God. So the place where Sri Ramakrishna was born, where he grew up, etc., these are important places for us, extremely sacred places. Similarly, Sri Ramachandra, Bhagwan Sri Ram, and Sri Krishna, every place connected with their personality is sacred. Whenever you go to any sacred place, always practice what has been prescribed for that place. Don't ever violate that. Never. Similarly, there are special dates. There are special dates like Sankranti and others, which are considered sacred. So, places are sacred, constellations are sacred, dates are sacred. So, Hindu religion is all about seeing sacred everywhere. Why? Because God in Hindu Dharma is not personified a limited being. He is ever present and present everywhere. So you have to connect yourself with the divine in every possible way. Date wise, hour wise, place wise, in every possible way. You might say, what is this hour wise? Yes, indeed. Like morning hours, junction hours, these are considered to be specially auspicious. Then there are lots of festivals, and during festivals, the important thing is we are not talking about cultural festivals, we are talking about religious festivals. In religious festival now, for example, Deepavali is a religious festival, Diwali. But now it is slowly becoming a social festival. Whenever there is a religious festival, the custom is that you offer food, etc., food, fruits, etc., to your household deity and distribute that as prasad. Prasad means the offered food. So, in different localities, even in different professions, festivals differ. So, you'll find that Makar Sankranti is a very interesting festival. This same Makar Sankranti in South India, particularly in Tamil Nadu, it has a different name. In Punjab, it has a different name. So, all this is related to that Sankranti thing, that proper conjunction, etc. However, there are certain festivals which are quite common to all the Hindus, like Deepavali, Holi, etc. And then there is Vrata. So we have pilgrimage, we have festivals, and we have Vrata. Vrata is individual practices. individual practices. Individual practices means one person may practice, other will not. When it comes to festivals, it's a community celebration, religious celebration. When it comes to vrata, it means you focus your mind and try to connect with the divine in an individual way. Usually, ladies used to have lots of such vrata. Now, films also made some of these brothers quite popular. One of them is Karwa Chauth. Now, when I was young, I never heard of such a thing called Karwa Chauth. So it penetrated in whole of eastern India from Punjab. In Punjab, Delhi, etc., it was a very popular practice. It might be there in other parts of India, but I didn't know. Personally, I didn't know. But now Karwa Chauth is being practiced by lots of people. But most popular vrata is Ekadashi Vrata, the 11th day of lunar month. It is said that you should do some practice on Ekadashi date. And of course, people will come up with a scientific explanation. I am not at all into the scientific explanation type. It's not needed. That day is considered auspicious. It has been declared maybe by some spiritual giant, and millions have been practicing it for thousands of years. That itself makes it sacred. You don't require any scientific explanation for such things. And dear listeners, don't trust any speaker, any religious person who gives scientific explanations to these things. Just don't trust, because science belongs to the realm of mind which is far inferior to the reality of the spirit, because spirituality is beyond mind. Don't you ever trust anyone who comes up with any kind of scientific explanation. Know that this person is shallow. That's the only word I can use for them. Now, in dharma, that's being religious. So, a very important thing is religion during crisis. Says that if you have to save your life, if you have to save someone else's life, and when you're having fun, and or you are about to lose everything, you may transgress your dharma, religious practices. To remind you, whatever I'm telling you is just an outline of the thing. Don't you think that Hindu religion is so simple? If we chance to have Manusmriti in detail, we will see how detailed is the Hindu practices. The idea is whatever your ideals, whatever your practices, you can drop it. You can tell lies, you can accept gifts, you can steal, even steal. If there is a crisis, it's known as apad dharma, dharma in crisis situation. Now, every time you perform some kind of dharma, some kind of compromise when there is a crisis, you should also do penance. How to perform penance? There are many ways. One is you do special worship and you admit it before the elders. You go on a pilgrimage, etc. etc. Our spiritual books, they give a whole list of prashchit, the technical term is prashchit, penances that can be performed. And in Manusmriti, there is a huge list of which prashchit to perform, which penance to perform when you make a particular transgression. And that brings us to the most important issues that rankle most of us: sin. How Hindus see sin. Now, as for the Western religion, sin means transgressing or disobedience to the word of God. When you transgress the words of God, God has commanded you to do certain things. For example, in Judaism, God has commanded to do certain things, and those commands cross, I think, a list of 550 or so. If you transgress any of those, it's a sin. When it comes to Islam, it becomes a very serious thing. Surprisingly, in Christianity, this problem of sin is not, this problem of sin is simply not there. But church imposed it just to be at par with Judaism and Islam. And thus came the idea of original sin, etc. But in the words of Lord Christ, you don't come across sin. In Hindu religion, there is no sin. The idea of sin is not there. Whenever the word pap, which is loosely translated as sin, comes, it simply means that some kind of detour, transgression in the sense of detour. That means you are going from point one to point two, and then you make a detour, you change your path. It makes your path a bit longer. How to self correct? Come back to the original path. It's over. And if you are feeling worried, if you feel that you have become dirty by transgressing, perform some prashit, some penances, it's over. Do some fast, do some Gayatri Japam, do some extra mantra Japam. I remember when I was young, white brahmachari. Brahmachari means in white dress. In Ramakrishna mission, you have to be in that dress for 9 years. And I had asked our president, Srimad Swami Gambhiranji Maharaj, in those days, there is a ceremony for us after 5 years. And in that, we had a meeting with Srimad Swami Gambhiranji Maharaj. 40 of us were there. So I had asked him that what happens when we make some mistake? Like we have taken this vow and that vow. He simply said, do japam for 108 times. That's a big thing, because when you take Lord's name, it purifies you of every sin that you might have committed. So, well, that's the how to be religious. Now, coming to spirituality, which is very important thing, just remember that when you are being religious, you have to make a lot of effort, because religion means do's and don'ts. Do this, don't do this. So, a lot of effort is required. Spirituality is about spontaneity. Spontaneity. Spontaneity means the way a baby spontaneously loves her mom. It doesn't require any training. Just like that, you love God. You love God exactly in the same way. But how can you love somebody whom you don't know? God is your inner self, and you know your inner self all the time. All the time. When you are all alone, when you are sleeping, when you are in some kind of pensive mood, sad, you are with yourself. And you will be surprised to know that maximum strength and the best of strength comes when you are alone. You might have seen that when you are sad, you tell others not to disturb you. You want to be yourself. This desire, this desire to be yourself is some kind of, you can say, poor reflection of spirituality. In spirituality, consciously you become one with yourself. This is self-knowledge. This is Atmagyan. This is being with Atman. That is when you realize that you are Atman. And that is when you realize you are one with God. So, spontaneous for yourself, small s. That means your true nature. We, as far as religion, It's the connect with the community too. In spirituality, it's your connect with the divinity by yourself. Yes. How to make it spontaneous? How to make it certain practices? Spiritual, those which help you to realize your identity with the outside need to be correct. Initial, all teach us that look, whatever your mind experience, get out of it. Oh, audio is not clear. We can do nothing about it. It's maybe because I'm talking softly.
No, it's
Uh,
clear,
or it,
Maharaj. It's clear.
listen carefully. You see, you need to be a little more focused. So spirituality is about spontaneity. Spirituality is about being with oneself. Only that self is capital S. God resides within you. God resides within you. So now look, some of you are complaining about voice. I can do nothing about it because we are not disturbing. We are not at all. There is nothing in our sound system. So I can do nothing. You have to. So there are certain basic requirements. There are certain basic requirements when it comes to spirituality. Ah. First is a very strong desire to be spiritual. Now, this is something which lacks in most people. For most people, spirituality is a part time business, whereas no, no, here we go. Spirituality is a full time. Full time. You ha- to be spiritual means a full time thing. Religiosity can be part time, spirituality cannot be. When you say that I want to be spiritual, it means now see, if you keep complaining about sound, I will have to cut it off. I can do nothing about it. There is no problem with our system. As sound is clear. Anyway, I don't know. Please have patience. I can do nothing about it. System is there is no possibility of any disturbance in the system. Now, maybe sometimes I'm speaking softly. So, first thing is you need to have a very strong desire to be spiritual, which means you need to get out of worldly attachments and worldly things. And to remind you, this is the biggest problem that I have noted in people who want to be spiritual. Remember it, it's a full-time job. Like when you go to take bath, say in a pond, you may take bath once a day, you may take it twice a day, you may take thrice a day. What about fish? They don't take any bath. They're always in water. To be religious means to take bath twice daily, thrice daily. To be spiritual means to be in that water all the time. And yet, we are spiritual all the time. Every time you think of yourself as I, this I is Atman. This I is God. We don't realize it. We identify our that I with the body, with the mind, etc., etc. That's where the mistake is. What the scriptures say that what you wrongly think to be body, to be your mind, is actually the pure spirit, the infinite. To be spiritual means to learn this fact. For that, you need to get out of worldly habits, worldly attachments, worldly pleasures, etc. etc. Why? Because these things limit your personality. So, second very important thing is that you need to purify yourself through noble acts and through religious practices because your mind will not be ready till you have done it. Anyone nowadays, these young people, they say, they keep on speaking, I am spiritual, not religious. And they utter nonsense. And third very important thing is that you must have a very good grasp of scriptures. Scriptures mean the path that you have chosen. For example, those of you who want to take the path of Vedanta, you must know what Acharya Shankara has said. Those of you who are following Sri Ramakrishna's words, you must study the words of Sri Ramakrishna regularly. Those who want to take purely bhakti path, you need to study the masters of bhakti literature thoroughly. See, unless you have these three conditions fulfilled, first, a strong desire to be spiritual. Second, purity attained through noble practices and religious practices. And then this study. Once you are ready, you will have a spiritual guide. You will have a spiritual guide, and that spiritual guide can be your mantra guru, diksha guru. He can also be someone who knows scriptures and talks to you about scriptures. Scriptures means spiritual matters. You learn the things from that person and go ahead. Ultimately, you are on your own. Ultimately, you are on your own, and a time may come when you realize that you are one with your chosen deity, that's Easter, and you are one with your Guru. So ultimately, it's that same I which divides into three: your Guru, that is your teacher, your Easter, and you. As we proceed with the expansion of the scriptures, we will see more and more of these things. When it comes to being spiritual, there can be any number of paths. For example, in Gita itself, we have 18 chapters dedicated to 18 yogas. Yoga means to unite. And first one is Vishad Yoga, yoga of sorrow. That means through sorrow also one can unite oneself with God. Who is God? Yourself. They are not different. That's where a Hindu differs from other religions. Indian spiritual traditions differ from other religions. For other religions, God is somewhere outside. In Indian tradition, God is within you. You are one with it. Till you have the sense of I. You and God are different. When that sense of I goes away, you are one with that God. You are ever present in front of God. Ever. You are never away from God. Just remember this. You only have to realize this fact. And then there are innumerable other paths. So what Swami Vivekananda did was, he kind of categorized them into four. Most of you might be knowing about it. First of them is known as Jnanapath. Jnana. Jnanapath is the path of discrimination. So do not confuse, like Dr. Devasis was asking. Jnana means something different in our day-to-day language. When it comes to spirituality, Jnana means to know what is the conscious principle, what is the real and what is unreal. Everything that belongs to the realm of the mind is unreal. Move away from that. Everything that is limited in time and space is unreal. Move away from it. That which is pure consciousness, that which is pure love, that which is pure knowledge is God. Stay focused on that. Leave everything else. Now, naturally, it's very difficult. Those of you, you might have heard of people who talk about Advaita and people who talk about Vedanta. Vedanta is focused mostly on this Jnana. And this is, believe me, near impossible. It sounds good, And when you speak, you feel good. And I have seen people who say, I am a Vedantin. But Vedanta, the true Vedantin means those who follow this path of staying focused on consciousness all the time, giving up everything which belongs to the realm of the mind. Now, going beyond the realm of mind means going beyond sacred books too, scriptures too. Going beyond means giving up everything. Impossible. It's a very difficult thing. It's meant for chosen few. Like chosen few, believe me. The second path, which is much easier for us, is bhakti. And that's why they say that in Vedanta also there are two different streams. One is Gyan Path and there is Bhakti Path. In Bhakti Path, what happens? You assume your identity to be real and separate from God. And then you go for devotion, your attachment with God through worship, etc. In bhakti, path becomes pretty simple because devotion is mostly about love. And love is something that we all have experienced. Actually, we experience discrimination too. That means we know how to give up certain things. We all have. For example, when we were in schools, whenever the bell rang, the class for one subject stopped, and the period for the second topic, second class began. So we have learned it since our childhood. One thing stops, another begins. However, when it comes to Jnanapath in spirituality, it becomes very subtle and heart wrenching. You have to give up everything that you have been holding dear. That includes religious practices, that includes sacred books. Even the Vedas need to be dropped away. Huh. They get dropped away. In bhakti, things become much simpler because by nature we are emotional, by nature love people. So loving God becomes pretty simple, pretty easy. Not simple, pretty easy. But if you read bhakti literature, you'll find that as you proceed, in the beginning path seems so easy, so easy. As you proceed, slowly you'll find that bhakti path is becoming similar to jnana path and starts becoming difficult. So it's not easy to be bhakta. In the early stages, it may sound very simple, very easy, but as you proceed, it becomes very difficult. And then there is Yog Path, path of yoga, where if we go by Raj Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, there it very clearly says that there are two states of mind. One is when mind is continuously in motion. The technical term for it is vritti. The vrittis, the mental modifications, need to be stilled totally. Then what happens? You become what you are. This is what we have been talking about when we began how to be spiritual. When we discuss Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, we will discuss what are these mental modifications, what are the different kinds of mental modifications, and how to still them. As you still them, you become what you are. You don't attain something new. But there is another path of yoga which comes from Shakti tradition, Tantra tradition, where you say that you consciously try to identify yourself with your Ishta, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say. Actually, what happens, there are two distinct spiritual paths, or spiritual ideals rather. Sorry, not paths, ideals. One is that of jnana, where consciousness, the infinite consciousness alone is truth. Second is that of bhakti, in which your I-ness remains I. And that consciousness now appears as God. This I is not ignorance minded, it's pure I of a devotee of God. This is not ignorance, it's love. So pure consciousness, Satchidananda, now appears, that is Brahman, appears now with form. That is God. So Sri Ramakrishna, when he had vision of Kali, when he was with Kali, he was experiencing pure consciousness through his loving mind. That mind itself was so pure, it was as transparent as anything. So there are two distinct spiritual ideals, although they are same, they appear to be different. One is of jnana and there is of bhakti. Now, when we talk about stillness of mind through yoga, this belongs to the path of jnana. And when we talk about jivatma, becoming one with one's ideal, spiritual ideal, it's bhakti path. And the fourth one is karma, because we are always doing karma. In earlier times, the path of karma was identified with Vedic rites and rituals. Now, if somebody does all the acts in an unselfish way, says that the mind becomes pure, or you dedicate your actions to God. Again, you can see that there are two distinctive ideals. When you are working unselfishly, which is known as, very often it's translated as this detach. Detachment means unselfishness. Now, unselfishness takes you towards pure consciousness in Advaita form. And when you dedicate the results of your action to God, it takes you towards bhakti. So essentially, there are two ideals. When you move towards those two ideals, the paths are also two, Gyan and Bhakti. However, these two are aided with external activity, which is karma, or inner control, inner restraint, which is yoga. Swamiji has formulated these four paths, of which all these four paths, when you practice discrimination, practice devotion, practice mental control, and dedicate your work, practice work, these things lead you to your divine nature. In that divine nature, either you are one with God as a devotee, or you realize that you are one with pure consciousness, you are one with Atman. Well, that's all about being spiritual, how one becomes spiritual, what is spirituality. Now, as you start doing spiritual practices, you may wonder whether or not you are growing. And for that, you will have to go through the scriptures to see what the scriptures say about growth, what it means to be growth, and whether or not you are growing. So that's a brief discussion on Hindu spirituality, what it takes to be spiritual, what it means to be spiritual, and how Hindu spirituality is different from spirituality of others. Thank you so much.